protection engineer at Texas Oil and Gas Institute. And as mentioned, I'm very involved with SPE in the regional, local, and in the international section. Today, I'm taking a little break in terms of discussing data analytics, abiding to the theme, and talking about a new initiative that SPE launched in 2016, and that is our Women in Energy Committee, which has been that recent push of promoting diversity and promoting inclusion in SPE international sections. And since this is a student symposium, what a better way to introduce this organization and leverage SPE Win and how to best benefit students. So while there's not as much content to cover an hour-long presentation, I do encourage as much input as possible. And at the very end, I will require a lot of interaction from you all because there's going to be some conflict resolution questions that I'll be asking. And then whether if you had an internship or a research position, how have you responded to some of those situations? So a quick question for you all. I don't know how many universities are represented here. Obviously LSU, but I want to gauge from you all how many petroleum engineering students from your university are women. So raise your hand if it's less than 20%. Oh my God, even at A&M?
We were 18 last time I checked an actual number.
Oh man.
I don't know if...
We're going to change that.
Are we higher than 18 now?
Just over 20.
Just over
okay.
20?
I haven't checked it in a while though.
So 20 to 40%. Okay, LSU. What school are y'all from?
We're from Calgary.
Calgary?
0 to 20.
Awesome. 40 to 60, who's reached the halfway point? So I guess it's a moot point that the majority aren't women. Well, that's more of the reason for us to have the SPE Women in Energy Committee. So this is based on the mandate from 2016 of what was rolled out as far as the mission for SPE Win. We wanted to promote gender diversity in the oil and gas industry by attracting, retaining, engaging women in STEM careers. And we want to create opportunities for women to help them step into leadership and more active roles and to pursue their career goals. So raise your hand if you're an SPE officer, if you're a female, if you're an SPE officer. Okay, awesome. We want to encourage more of that into the SPE student chapters as well. And then the vision is, of course, is empowering women to realize their full potential in the oil and gas industry. These are our 5 main pillars, and then I'm just going to do a comparison on what our goals have been and what we've accomplished as of the first year. So I talked a lot about this in the mission slide, that we want to attract more women into STEM. How many of you all have heard of Energy for Me? Okay, that's very active in the Houston area especially. But Energy for Me is a program is an outreach program where you go to local schools and and bring energy awareness. And SPE is very active on that in raising awareness for oil and gas especially. So we're trying to leverage Energy for Me and encouraging young women to pursue STEM careers. And then create a market for women's programs in SPE. We want to build from what's already established in the regional and the local sections. A&M has a Women in Engineering program, correct? Okay.
SWE and we.
Yeah, SWE and we, right. And then promoting women leadership in SPE. So you already heard Janine Judas talk a couple hours ago on how SPE and networking have helped her, but we hope to see many faces similar to her in the industry, especially in the future. And then we want to connect women in technical and in leadership roles. So not just be in soft skills committees, but also assume technical leadership in the SPE International Board. And then, how many of you all sat on Shauna's talk yesterday? Right. So she's been very active in SPE, and SPE has benefited her quite a bit, especially being on the international board and being the technical board member for production and operations. And then finally, we want to promote diversity as an industry goal. And I would think it best starts from the university level, from your student chapters, when we have more leadership roles or we see more female officers in SPE. So the first goal that we rolled out for 2016, and I'm not going to go everything line by line, but here are some of the objectives that we've been trying to have for attracting women into the STEM field. So I talked about Energy for Me, and instead of focusing on or targeting the younger kids in general from K to 12, have more women be involved with Energy for Me, and then target like female students and encouraging them into STEM and leadership roles. And then, how many of you all heard of the SPE mentoring program? Okay, there is an option in the e-mentoring program for women that if you want to connect with other women for leadership or for technical advice. And here are some of the updates that have happened since 2016. As far as Energy for Me, we've already reached out to those personnel, and there are already efforts that are being made. I can speak from the Gulf Coast section in that there are more women that are in different committees within the Gulf Coast section, and then we've been teaming up with other organizations in increasing awareness about how to pursue engineering goals or how to pursue engineering careers. And then be on the lookout for webinars that are coming out in 2018. We have a few webinars that are focused on soft skills and technical skills by women across the industry, and they'll be sharing some of their experiences from their work experience, and then that also goes back to the representation. Here are some of the section and chapter initiatives that we're rolling out, and this is more applicable to the student chapters. But for instance, we are wanting to recruit and select leaders to represent women's committees and sections. We want to work with committees and section chapter events to identify female speakers and panelists for events. And I'll show the committee structure. We're growing, but right now we have about 8 committee members in the Women in Energy Committee internationally, and we're all working in industry right now. But we do have a section and chapters chair. Her name is Dilyara Iskakova, and she's the one who's wanting to reach out to student chapters individually and just ask for y'all's feedback as far as how could you best leverage SPE Win, or what SPE Win could address for future initiatives in the next couple of years. And I guess after this talk, feel free to reach out to me, and I can give you her email, or I can give you the general email. But the general email for SPE Win is speglobalwin@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out to us, and then reach out to Dilyara.
Is it gmail.com?
At gmail.com, right. There are many networking events that I know that from the Gulf Coast section, we are pairing up with SPE and SWE, and we've been rolling those out quite a bit. I'm not sure within the student chapters that's also something that you've all been doing, but that's a suggestion that we'd want to give out. And those are some of the updates that we have as far as encouraging the collaboration between networking events, and then how to promote female leadership within the student chapters. Oh, and how often or how active are you all in SP Connect? Do you use SP Connect? I know student chapter officers have access to SP Connect, but that's something that we're pushing, especially in North America. There are other regions in SPE that are actively using SPE Connect, but since the networks are really involved, as Janine mentioned in her talk a couple hours ago, that we haven't really found the use of using SPE Connect within the section or within North America. Our third goal is our female leadership and representation. There is a committee called Emerging Leaders Alliance, which is really a leadership workshop from SPE. Based on your application, SPE will select delegates and pay for your trip for this leadership workshop. I was selected a couple years ago, and I went to this workshop in Virginia. But I think that it's been very beneficial for me, because you not only interact with those within SPE, those have been selected, but you also interact with 8 partnering professional societies. And chances are you're going to be running into them into the oil and gas industry anyway. But there was only 1 or 2 of us that were women that were selected to be delegates, or that were even nominated. So what we hope to do is that we identify women, whether if they are young professionals or whether if they're students, and nominate somebody that you'd find that would be a really great candidate for the Emerging Leaders Alliance workshop. This is generally held in late October or November, but applications come out during the summer. And then we want to facilitate the development of more webinars. I already talked about that. For the speaker selection process, for moderators, and then for conference selections, raise your hand if you've been, and this isn't limited to women or men, but raise your hand if you've presented at SP conferences before, if you've moderated as a speaker, and you count as well as far as chairing a committee session. So raise your hand if you've been involved in terms of moderating sessions, whether if you're a speaker or if you've presented in conferences before. Awesome. We want more hands raised by the end of this, or in the next couple of years. And then collaborate with relevant stakeholders for women that are represented in all committees, executive committees. So other than SWE, has anyone heard of Catalyst or Pink Petro? Okay. We'd want to collaborate with those organizations as well. And then,
Can you explain what Pink Petro is?
sure. Pink Petro is the same as a Women in Energy. It's not a Women in Energy committee, but it's another committee for women in oil and gas or women that are involved in the oil and gas industry. And they hold women-specific events or like female conferences, whether they're technical or they're soft skills. They're very active in the Houston area, and I can shoot you more information on that. They're very active on social media as well. If you follow them on LinkedIn or Facebook, that'll help you out. And then the deadline already passed for nominations for SPE awards. The regional award deadline is next Friday. But what we hope to do, and I know SPE has launched a campaign for this quite a bit with some of their video campaigns, that if you identify somebody that ought to be recognized for their leadership, for their technical, or for their volunteering contributions in SPE, one of the requirements in SPE is that someone has to nominate that person. Go ahead and nominate that person for an SPE regional or for an international award. It does wonders if you know somebody that is an award recipient. It also does wonders for your career when you are recognized for your technical and then for your volunteering contributions. I know that when I was an SPE officer, and then even being involved with SPE now, it can be a lot of work. And then it can be quite a bit for when you're asking for management to take a couple days off just to be involved with running a conference. So those people should take credit, or you should get credit for that. As far as updates go, I'm not going to go line by line for each one of them, but to address the webinars, to address female leadership, to address nominations, we have a form coming out, or we've already launched this form on our Facebook page, but it's called the Women in Influence Form. Has anyone seen this at all on social media, or heard about it, or seen it on SP Connect if you use SP Connect? That's what I thought. The Women of Influence form is really a brief application form, as similar to writing up your profile on SPE. It's going to ask you for the subdisciplines, if you're interested in being a moderator, if you're interested in being a committee member, if you're interested in being a speaker, and whether if it is local to your section or whether if it is internationally. If you do indicate if you're willing to travel, if you do indicate that your company will sponsor you for all this travel, then what we end up doing is have all that information, those interests in a database, and then when the time arises, for example, when there's ATCE, or if there is a conference that's near College Station or near Baton Rouge, we could reach out to you and recruit you. That, hey, would you like to be a speaker? Would you like to be a moderator? Would you like to be a session chair? So that's the purpose of the Women of Influence form. And that also goes for if you're interested in hosting a webinar for people for all around the world to hear your recording and hear your talks, then that could be something of interest for you to sign up as well, whether it's technical or non-technical. I'm really giving all of you guys some options as far as how to be more integrated into the SP International section, because I know it's pretty easy, even as in a student section or even in a professional section, it's very easy to get pretty siloed into that. But the more active we are by using SPE Win and leveraging SPE Win, that we could have more standardization on how to integrate better with different chapters and different sections. And I'm very curious now, because in the Gulf Coast section we do reach out to A&M, or we do reach out to different schools, but in the Delta section or the professional section, how involved is LSU, or do you guys collaborate with young professionals at all, or do you know anybody in the YP committees, or is there a YP committee?
I don't think so.
Okay, well that's something that we'd also want to encourage students for outreach. I mean, you never know how many alumni that you could reach out to that will come for SP talks as well. And then along with the SPE nominations for regional and international awards, we'd also are generating an award system for a Women in Energy certification. So that goes along the lines of technical contributions and then volunteering contributions as well. And we know that there are some things that are taken credit by SP International and some that are not. as of right now, until this WIN certificate is generated, be sure to be very transparent in your annual report on what exactly that you're doing as far as representation goes. Like, have you been collaborating with SPE for networking events? So that's a suggestion that I have right now. And then as for education and outreach, I did talk about energy for me, but that we'd want to address that for training, and we'd want to address that in webinars as well. And then I talked about Pink Petro, but those are some of the other organizations that you want to reach out to from your student chapters, invite them as speakers. And then you'd want to partner with member companies. If you've interned with companies before, with other large companies, do they have active women's networks? Okay. So what we want to do is raise awareness within those women networks, within those companies, that SPE WIN is a global organization or a global committee or a global initiative. And if there are webinars that, for example, Chevron's Women in Energy Network committee might be interested in, then they ought to listen to this webinar. Or there's a conference that's overseas that's probably near another Chevron office. Those are other ideas as well. And then, of course, partnering with other associations. I talked about the webinars, but these are some of our updates that we're doing in terms of outreach. So be on the lookout for our quarterly webinars in 2018. We're kicking off on talking a little bit about human resources, and then we have a range of companies as far as where our technical experts are coming from. But this will be hosted by the Women in Energy Committee. I should have introduced myself as initially on this, but as a part of the subcommittee or as a part of the committee, I am the leadership and representation chair, so I would be facilitating most of these webinars. And if you have any suggestions on what kind of topics you'd like to hear, feel free to reach out to me or email SP Global WIN, and I'll address that to our chair. I'm not going to go block by block on what each role is for the committee structure. But this is the committee structure that we've rolled out for 2016, and we're growing. What we have right now in terms of all the positions that are filled, or the committee positions that we have, are subcommittee chairs, and then our deputy WIN chair, our advisor, and then our chair. This is what we hope to have students, graduating seniors, or young professionals to be more involved with. And of course, our general volunteers could be student volunteers that are really active in communicating with us, but they're more of a member at large, as opposed to having a specific role. But our second tier are what we're hoping to fill up for 2018. Has anyone heard of the Women in Energy Facebook page or LinkedIn group? So our first year, we're ramping up our publicity or social media campaign to raise more awareness, or for you all to keep updated on events that will be held by us, especially with webinars. But this is our social media updates. We've launched our Facebook page a couple years ago. We've had quite a few followers, and we do have some post reaches, but of course, there's always opportunity for growth in this area. But if you are a student, if you are very active in your student chapter, if you are kind of in charge of that social media account, be sure to follow us. And be sure to share some of the events if they are of interest within your student chapter, or if they're of interest within SPE in your local sections. I talked about the e-mentoring program, but here are some ideas that I had as far as how students could get involved, or how students especially in North America, in the North America region, could leverage SPE WIN. I talked about the e-mentoring program. You could change your preferences as far as who you want to connect with, whether if you are seeking a mentor, or whether if you do want to mentor other young women. And then, of course, leveraging us as the SPE WIN committee. We do have a lot of volunteering positions or volunteering roles, and if you are interested in those specific roles and responsibilities, reach out to us, and then we can give you some background as far as what we're looking for, or how you can best help and how you can best contribute. And then I talked about the webinar series that are rolling up for our quarterly webinar series. And then I'm not sure as far as the mentorship programs or how much involvement you have with other alumni in the industry. Does women in engineering, or does A&M have an industry, like, do you reach out to other people in the industry and have a mentorship program with other students?
We and we? Are you
With
talking?
Yes? Yes? Okay. So I'll talk about some of the experiences that I had in Women in Petroleum and Geosystems Engineering. That was a sub-organization by the Women in Engineering program. We had different sub-disciplines for women in aerospace, women in electrical and computer engineering. So I was a president of Women in PGE. And we had a mentorship program by a super major in that they provided quite a bit of sponsorship and industry mentors that were alumni from UT. We connected them with applicants or with women that were very interested in pursuing a topic that in oil and gas, and they would focus on that for the semester, whether if it's revamping an industry project or from their internship, or whether if it is pursuing a research topic if they never had an internship before. So similar to the it's the SPE student paper contest, we'd have these women present, and we'd also have judges that are within the Women of Engineering program and have a similar evaluation system to that of the SPE student paper contest. Based on the performance of these women, they were granted different scholarships or different levels of scholarships. So that's something that we rolled out in UT's Women in Petroleum and Geosystems Engineering, and that's hopefully something that could be passed along, that could be arranged with your alumni network. And then, of course, since I asked about the SPE Women in Energy page and not many people raised their hands, what we'd also want is if we do post something on Facebook, or we are in the process of creating a LinkedIn page, that make sure you keep track of that or follow us, especially student chapters. If you have your account for your student chapters, I think that's a lot more effective. And then, of course, utilizing existing women in energy or women in engineering organizations such as SWEET, and then Pink Petro and Catalyst. You've heard me talk for quite some time about the Women in Energy Committee and all the details, as well as the updates in the past couple of years. Now I want to hear from all of you for the following exercises. And then here's a disclaimer that I want to put up here, that the main objective of conflict resolution. So for instance, the motivation is to have all of the attendees, regardless of gender, for their awareness and feedback on the following various scenarios that could happen in the workplace. I don't know if this happened, or if you've been exposed to this when you've been working in the field, or if you had an internship in the past. But this might be something that you'd want to be aware of, and this could happen in the workplace, and how to address that, how to know that if this is an issue, or should it be questioned, and how could you stand up? So I want you to take a couple minutes to read this scenario, and then I guess after some thoughts, raise your hand as far as what would you have done in the past if you were the engineer or if you were the company representative. So a young female engineer is shadowing a company representative on an onshore location. After a few months of training, she will eventually get her own workover rigs to be in charge of. The rig hands speak in Spanish among each other when they don't need to speak with a company representative. However, the engineer understands Spanish, and during some instances, overhears the rig hand say something about her between themselves. That makes her feel uncomfortable. The company representative could gauge the difference in her behavior during those instances. So, if you've experienced this in the past, or if you've heard about this before, what would you have done if you were the engineer? Or what would you have done if you were the company man? Any takers?
I think as an engineer, you should speak to the supervisor, let them know what's going on, so they could be addressed with those that are making those kind of comments.
Right. Anyone else?
As the company man, I think that you should ask, like, what's going on, like, why are you also, like, is your attitude changing? And then as the engineer should respond and, like, let them know the truth, so that way, like, both people know. And then I think that the engineer should then turn and address the people and let them know, like, I understand what you're saying, that's not appropriate for work, and kind of like address it in that type of situation and let them know, like, that's not acceptable, even if they think that they can get away with it just because it's a different language.
Okay. Anyone else? So of course the theme for both of this is make sure you speak up. Constant communication, with your supervisor, and whether if you are a company man in training is very important. And even though I bring this situation up right now, this does happen in the field, or this does happen in the workplace. But the objective is that as long as you speak up, or as long as you are in a safe situation to where you could discuss with the company man or discuss with a company representative, then speaking up is extremely important. So the second scenario I want to bring up is experience bias. So a young engineer is giving a presentation during one of the weekly meetings in front of her managers and peers. In the middle of her presentation, one of her managers interrupts with either a comment or a question after every 3 minutes. In the past, other managers and peers have not objected to this particular manager's habits, but the manager has not acted this way with more senior engineers when they gave presentations. So if anyone has experienced this in the past, what would you have done if you were the engineer? What would you have done if you were their peers, like if you're around the same age as her? Or what would you have done if you were the peer of the manager?
So this is kind of a different situation, but like semi-similar. So I was in a capstone. I'm in a minor, so I'm in a leadership minor, and our capstone for the leadership minor is a very more like soft skills kind of capstone, and so it's a lot of big group discussion, and it's like a big lecture hall full of it was like just discussions, and so but we're all in separate groups, and so I was talking about something, and this guy from another group just like super rudely interrupts me, and so one of the other guys in my group literally stood up and was like, you can't do that, like she wasn't finished talking, you need to let her finish. And so I think as like peers, like especially like her more senior people, like if that's not how they treat other people, then like something needs to be said by the people that like know how like you should or shouldn't act. I don't know, but yeah. So
Anyone else? Okay.
In a situation where peers didn't stand up and talk for you, and then assistant manager's interrupting after the presentation, I would have an offline conversation with the manager expressing they didn't appreciate them being interrupted.
Okay. Okay.
And this actually happened to me at my final presentation at the end of my internship, which the typical protocol is questions at the end. And mid-speech or presentation, one of the engineers was like, wait, what happened to that well? And then I had to go back and kind of answer it. So I answered it because I wasn't going to say, like, oh, can you wait till the end? But one of the other managers did, which was nice.
Okay.
I guess I can give more of a comment on this. Usually the reason people wouldn't say anything is because they're shy, right? And they don't feel comfortable with themselves trying to express that this might make them feel uncomfortable. Or so I think in retrospect of all these things, it's kind of a bit more on the education aspect prior to having these things happen. In the moment in time, whenever you see this, it's going to be very difficult to give yourself enough motivation and push in order to say something. So yeah, this is something I guess that just generally needs to be trained within the psyche of the workforce in order for them to understand that there's a time and place for everything.
Right.
You don't interject it with comments during a presentation if it's not allowed. You have to wait.
Right.
So I also think that the other thing of like being, a little intern who's like presenting, and when your manager asks you a question, like you're so nervous about messing up or anything like that, so you're just automatically gonna like respond. But I think that it's super appropriate, especially as like the young engineer, after to go up to your manager and ask like, was there something wrong with my presentation? Like on my next presentation, like do you need me to have more clarity on certain things? And kind of like try and use it as like a, hey, that was really rude, but like what's the feedback since you were being so rude about it?
Okay. Kyle, you have something?
Yeah, I had a question about that. This
Okay.
was almost a direct question back to you, but in many regards, it's very difficult to call someone out among their peers for something that they're doing wrong. But at the same time, if you pull them aside and you tell them, you don't necessarily have the credibility of those peers around you to kind of confirm, a complaint you're telling them that you're asking them to improve on. So what is the better situation? Do you call someone out where you have peers to shun them, or do you call them out when there's a safer environment where it's one-on-one?
That's a good question. I can speak from my experience. The safer option I would feel is after the presentation, after everything that has happened, then you'd go up to the manager and ask questions that what are opportunities of improvement, or you've mentioned certain things about my presentation during the presentation. I was wondering in the future what else I could have done to be a little bit smoother. You could do that. But it also depends on your dynamic or how well you know the team when you present. So for instance, if it's a very laid back environment, if everyone knows each other, then it's I would say it's a little bit easier to speak up and say that, hey, I don't appreciate you doing this. I think it just depends on the existing relationship. If you are not very familiar with each other, then I guess yes, then things like this do happen, and the interruptions constantly happen. However, in that particular case, you'd want to step aside. So it just depends on how well you know the people in the group you're presenting.
That's kind of how we were. I mean, like, this was like toward the end of the semester, and so like the entire class like kind of. So yeah, I definitely would agree with what you're saying. So it was like most of us knew this guy, and so it's like, dude, that's not cool.
And what's your name?
Maggie.
Maggie. So you make a really good point as far as, yeah, this should be trained in protocol and this should be trained in psyche, in the psyche as well. But oftentimes, not a lot of people are aware that they're doing it too.
Right.
And this happens all the time. So the objective, especially showing this scenario, is that stuff like this does happen, but at least we can think about it, or at least we can talk about it, and then we can gauge what would be the best course of action. Because there are many ways to skin a cat, and I mean, this is an example. So scenario 3, you probably get asked this quite a bit if you're a young intern. But a group of young engineers and managers will participate in a small talk in the mornings, which eventually progresses into closed-door meetings in one of their offices as the conversation leads to work-related matters. As a young engineer, you walk by them every morning when the door is closed. This eventually leads to meetings throughout the day in which you did not get an invite. However, you learn these meetings happen much later on because you were not included in the morning small talk. So what would you have done in the past or what would you do if you were the young engineer, or if you were her peers in these formal or informal meetings?
So if he or she is walking by once the door's already closed, they should probably get to work earlier and kind of like, if they know the general area where they're kind of at, like make a point to walk by early and join in on the conversation, like if they haven't really met all of them, like walk up and be like, hi, I'm new, my name is so-and-so. I was just wondering what y'all like. You know, if you could tell me about this, like have like kind of think of some questions to ask, maybe like to get yourself in on some of the small talk, or like notice who's typically almost always at that and go and find one of those people later and like try and like kind of form like a mentorship type relationship with them so that they want you to be included on things and like kind of show them that you are smart, you do deserve to be there, and that you can bring value to those meetings that are happening later on.
Okay.
So, again, it's like a similar kind of ish situation. So, my first internship, there was this big frac job so it's like a frac job, not a meeting, but there's this big frac job that was going on. And I wasn't really aware that the interns could go if they wanted to. Well, like I come into work one day and the other production intern he's not there. And so I went and asked my mentor, I was like, hey, where's so-and-so? Like, and he's like, oh, he's at the frac job. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to the frac job. Like, how come I could go? He's like, you could have gone if you just asked. So I feel like a lot, and he made a point of, like, whenever we were doing our end of the summer review of, like, kind of things I could improve on, you know, after being a little baby intern that doesn't know anything. And he said, as a young engineer, you really have to make a point to let them know that you want to do stuff, because if you don't, you're not going to get invited. Because like you are new, they're not. I mean, some people might make a point to, but I feel like more times than not, they kind of have their little like clique of people at work, and so, you know. But so yeah, so I think you kind of have to make an effort a little more.
Some of the more experienced personnel that I've met with companies say that they expect the young engineers to basically put themselves out there, make like a strategic initiative within themselves to make sure that they're known, and that basically requires them to get their foot in the door as much as possible and to just kind of eavesdrop a little bit.
Right.
And that's the basic way to get in. Otherwise, nobody's going to bring you in. It's you have to show some incentive for yourself in order to do that.
Anyone else?
Something that happened to me last summer that I really appreciated was one of the more senior guys would have these ice cream outings with the team, and then his friends too. And we just said, So, yeah, cookies and beans would go. And then based on that, I was meeting people, making friends, and kind of got in that way. Like, I'm making that first step. Eventually, it's like, oh, it's Houston Restaurant Week. Would you like to go to, something that's not the cafeteria? Even just getting that way. So it's appreciated.
Okay. Anyone else?
I actually had a similar story. I had a really challenging problem at work.
Okay.
And none of the engineers would really give me tangible feedback that was useful.
Okay.
Via like an email or a phone call or whatever. So one time I sat down at the desk of a more senior engineer and got to know him while also asking about my problem. And as a result, I got to go to an Indian buffet with him and all of his friends, none of which actually were Indian, so it was very interesting. But the ended up being that all of them kind of grouped together and helped me finish my project and were pivotal in giving me recommendations for hire. And it was really cool that taking the time to go through the digital blockade and make that in-person interaction was like pivotal.
So the overall theme is, as long as you put yourself out there, and that's one of the main and I guess that's probably the first rule you've probably heard as first getting the internship and then how to get the job. That's been the theme. How to put yourself out there, make sure you put yourself out there, and make sure you keep a close ear to the wall. And that doesn't stop when you're a full-time hire, by the way. So
Building rapport.
building rapport. Yeah. And you probably heard from previous talks about the importance of building relationships. So this is something that to be aware of, and then this is also not necessarily a challenge, but something that comes with the territory as far as how to build those relationships. I won't bug you anymore, but this is the last scenario that we'll go over. A young engineer is attending a company holiday party. She happens to come by herself to the party and talk with her coworkers. Most of the attendees happen to come with significant others and family. She gets asked by her peers on why she got home with a date, what's her marital status, and why she has not gotten married yet. So what you've done in the past if you were the engineer? If someone asked you.
Because I don't want to, I don't know.
Okay.
So I've had something, when I started my internship, everyone kind of asked me like what my relationship status was, a lot of people that I worked with. And my answer is like I have a boyfriend at home, and that we both are very career driven right now, so we're focusing more on our career, so we're okay with living in different like areas. And that typically follows up with, oh, is that really hard to do, like, all the separation? And I would always just kind of follow up, we really love each other, and that, we think that we're going to make it for we're in it for the long haul. But we understand that right now we're both engineers who need to focus, and we're very career driven. And then later we have the goal to be in the same location.
Okay. And this isn't just limited to dates or limited to marriage and kids. This is also if somebody asks you about your political affiliation, if somebody asks you about your religion, what your religious beliefs are. We're just wanting to put that out there as well. Anyone else?
I think people are just trying to get to know you.
Yeah.
Right? So
Okay.
I'll be straight up.
Yeah.
I think share if you feel comfortable with sharing, but if you don't be afraid to say, change the conversation or just tell them I don't feel comfortable.
Okay.
That information out.
Okay, good.
I'm on the other side of this because I like to get very personal with people, no matter what. I can't say like I ask these specific questions, but I do like to get personal. And in my mentality, that's kind of a way of building a relationship. If you want something to be very close and connected, it usually comes along the line with asking lots of questions.
Right.
Of course, and sometimes a company holiday party is not the best place, but in some perspective, if you see enough of a motivation towards understanding this person on a closer level, it can be important to be like this. My best guess is, though, you just gotta pick and choose what you want to answer if you do feel comfortable with it, and you have to express with the person that it might be something that you would like to answer or it might not.
Right. So along with building relationships, of course, you want to get to know the other person or you want to get to know your coworkers. But there will be situations where if you get very comfortable in just talking and just getting to know people as friends, that there are some questions that you'd want to set your boundaries on, and this can come from both sides. You could be the person asking a lot of questions, and then you could also be the person that may not be very, very open, or that takes a while to build those relationships. With all of that, I really thank the North American Student Symposium for giving me the opportunity or the platform to give a presentation like this. And hopefully you guys have some takeaways as far as how you could leverage SPE Women in Energy in your student chapters. We're trying to have a key liaison or like a key contact, especially for our student chapters of how to best leverage SPE Win. And we'd also want that succession plan because of course SPE officer boards change every academic year. So with that being said, I know I listed other suggestions on how to leverage SPE WIM, especially in North American universities. But do you guys have any questions? Any other comments? Anything? Yes.
I just have a comment. I just wanted to say to all the guys that showed up, like, thanks for coming to this talk. It makes me really happy seeing that men attend presentations that have like women in the title. Because like if I was a man, I don't know if I would do that, to be honest. But it does start with you guys too. Like it's not like I know there's all these women initiatives, but like the men need to be involved as well because like we work with you guys and it's just nice that you guys want to know about like how we think about certain situations because maybe you don't even know that some of us like feel like we're like I don't know don't fit in as well like. So it's just great that like the men have shown up. So thank you for coming, and hopefully you can maybe tell your other guy friends about some of the stuff that we talked about, and share it with the men because I know like women may not be the loudest voice in the room, which can sometimes mean that we just don't get focused on simply because we're not always that aggressive. So yeah, thanks for coming, guys and girls.
I work at Exxon and they push a STEM, especially with women. And recently we've had some waves of hiring of petroleum engineers, and a lot of them have been women. So it is opening up, and you're seeing more of it come through. So just keep pushing forward.
Anyone else?
I don't know if everybody. So I can't remember if she said this like Janine Judah's talk. Which I think most of y'all were there, if not, but I can't remember if she said it during her talk or like a comment afterwards, we went and talked to her afterwards, but she actually said that women are actually starting to get overrepresented in the leadership within SP, which I think, I think that's awesome, personally, because it's like we're kind of breaking that glass ceiling, but, and then I think Jordan mentioned it too, that we're having at A&M 4 of the 6 officers are going to be women next year.
Awesome.
In our A&M chapters. So I think that like that's really encouraging to hear stuff like that because I mean like Janine Judah's awesome and like there are women CEOs, but it's like the percentage overall is still very small, and so like over the industry as a whole.
Well, I was going to address to the second half of that especially you'll see this in North America, that when talks like these regarding diversity and inclusion, I think most of us are in the know as far as how to promote that women or that female leadership, or how to have more women be recognized, or how to give women, or just how to encourage people in general just to share their voice. But of course, across the board or in different regions, that may not always be the case, which is what we're trying to do in SP WIN. There isn't a blanketed solution for everything, but the point is to have key contacts with chapters and sections on how to address those needs a little bit more in other regions. Yes?
You actually said something that triggered something we learned about a few weeks ago in our ethics class, was the difference between diversity and inclusion. Diversity being inviting someone to the party, inclusion being asking someone to dance.
Right.
And I think one of the more interesting things that we got to figure out is how as guys we can be a bigger part of that secondary part, which isn't much appreciated until more recently. Is you can hire women, you can have them in your lives and your teams, but at the same time, when do you start to integrate them as just coworkers?
Right.
And that's something kind of interesting that I think you're doing a great job of.
Thank you.
It's maybe unrelated, so I apologize if that's the case. But when these scenarios happen, like getting interrupted in a presentation, you really don't know how you're going to react until it happens.
Right.
So for a lot of these things, as an incoming engineer, where do you
on the job, or you learn when it happens. It's more of a reactive approach. So my motivation for having those 4 scenarios is these are common scenarios that don't often get addressed. They're kind of unwritten rules in a way. They're just after when it happens. You can only prepare for so much in life, right? Or you can only prepare so much for your full-time job. You're focused so much on how to better yourself technically. But these are some of those little things of how to get access to those technical resources. And that's why I brought up those 4 scenarios, that even though they do happen, we also know at the back of our minds that we're aware of this, or we realize this after when it happens. But at least we can think of ranges of scenarios or ranges of actions to take. We don't have to feel as anxious about it. We don't have to feel as confused about it, I guess. So it's more of an awareness tool. Well, I really thank you guys for showing up for this. I know this is a break for the data analytics theme, but I think it's very important for just discussing on some of the new things that SPE is doing. And then I do think, especially in the North America region, we do have the strongest resources as far as how to leverage win. Thank you.